Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome back. Now, this part of our afternoon is probably the darkest and most sinister part of the symposium, which involves behaviour more of the living rather than the dead. Now, for some members of the audience, you may have seen the clip that we're going to show on the screen next. And for some long-term residents of Highgate who are present today, who may not have seen it, or may bring back some rather bad and unpleasant memories. We're screening it to help symposium attendees who were not around at the time to get an idea of how vastly different Highgate Cemetery of today is from what it was in the late 1960s. This is an excerpt from a film directed by Luigi Scattini, of sort of the Mondo generation of exploitation films from the 1960s and 1970s. It's very low budget cinema, and I have to apologise for the quality of the picture.
A police call in London. Jewel grab, prostitute slain, murder? No, but a crime has been committed. A crime upon the dead of Highgate Cemetery. What can the police do? There is one witness, and his lips are sealed. Aching terror or complicity. He just isn't sane. But will he ever outlive the memory of those shadows in the night? Shadows thrusting back the tombstones, prizing open the coffins, plunging their hands into the mouldering remnants of the dead. The needle-sharp pikes driven through the dusty skeletons. The police see it as public outrage, maniacal necrophilia. But that's not how the unholy writ of demonology describes it. Viewed from the precincts of the occult, this obscene profanation becomes a formalized ceremonial, the religious observances of the children of Satan, expressing an undying faith in their old religion. And they're not maniacs. They are men and women who live among us, whom we know and like, people we confide in, yarn to over a beer. They are people striking back at the world of technology through the timeless magic of witchcraft. Today, even the most skeptical of us are being forced to admit that our fiends have often succeeded where science is shackled by material data. As all good children know, 13th century witches flew to sabbaths on broomsticks, brewed foul potions in cauldrons based on a nourishing stock of the dismembered bodies of newborn babes. Today, thanks to a more liberal and fascinated public attitude, you can meet witches at Speaker's Corner Hyde Park, where even children of Satan are entitled to let off steam, carrying with it perhaps a whiff of brimstone. Meet Eleanor Bone, witch.
All you sinners will find out the truth on Judgment Day.
Why, wait, you can find out the truth now, dear, at a witch's sermon. We think it's stupid for everyone to have to put up with things as they are, because with witchcraft, your happiness is completely in your hands.
That's blasphemy, what you said.
I was going to say that was very heavy stuff, but I didn't realise that that lady was going to come on the end. So, I really wanted to set the background for the section of the symposium today. That was filmed in the very late 1960s, and through the whole of that previous decade, there was a growing incidence of ritualistic activity across Britain, church desecrations and things of that nature. In the very hard winter of 1963, it's possible to date the first of these incidents, which took place here at Clockhill Church on the A6 in Bedfordshire. Very famous example when the coffin of an apothecary's wife, Jenny Humberstone, was broken open, the bones taken out and displayed in a ritualistic pattern on the floor. Later on, in subsequent years, there was more desecration. These photographs were used by Eric Maple, a folklore writer and author in some of his books. But it gives you an idea of how the damage and vandalism that was taking place at that time. And as the 60s progressed, there were more examples of this taking place. Western Church near Pevensey, and a famous one in 1968 at Tottenham Park, where a coffin was dug up, broken open, and an iron stake driven through the rest of the corpse inside. Now, there's been a lot of debate as to whether these incidents, certainly particularly where the Clock Hill incident is concerned, whether this actually is a serious satanic or ritual, or whether it's just wanton vandalism. Where Clock Hill's concerned, the actual grave where Jenny Humberstone was disturbed, there was a huge slab about this thick, which had to be pulled aside. So there was certainly so much industry going on in that act of desecration that it makes me think that it wasn't a serious thing rather than just people messing around. We've seen the Tottenham Park, and that happened at Halloween in 1968. Luigi Scassini's crew filmed the video, which we saw at the beginning, in the early spring of 1969 at Highgate Cemetery. That was an entire year before the vampire flat was to hit the local headlines. If you notice that, you may not have seen it, in the Scattini film, there's very much focused on these trail of flowers, petals being trailed along the ground, and that was a similar, very familiar part. Same thing at Tottenham Park. There was a similar, almost ritualistic way that these flower petals were utilised. We don't actually know whether that scene that was filmed in Highgate was an actual reconstruction by the film crew, or whether it was they'd actually gone there and actually photographed the real desecration. That's not really clear. Now, what we do know in the 1960s is that Highgate Cemetery was being utilised as a source for occult supplies in the form of stolen skulls and other body parts during the period around 1962 at the latest. And in that year, famous war photographer Don McCullin composed this astonishing photograph of a local character, a man he knew by the name of Welch. Now, according to interviews given over the years, Welch was heavily into black magic, and other contemporary sources confirm that he was also involved in a small and highly secretive body-snatching ring, operating within both Highgate and Kensal Green cemeteries. So back even in the early 1960s, Highgate Cemetery had become neglected. From this period onwards, we see four very different kinds of vandalism and desecration emerging. You've got body snatching for occult retail purposes, like the Welch. You've got lead thieves breaking into coffins and literally taking away legs to sell. You've got the use of tombs and vaults within the cemetery by occult groups with markings and debris left behind. And you've got a sort of what we call the Johnny Rotten era of stakings, and that's because there's a passage in this book here, Lydon's autobiography, where he talks about going to Highgate at this period and messing around inside the vaults. So this activity involved stakings of skeletons and desiccated bodies, inspired by what had gone on in the early 70s, horror films, at least two of which were filmed actually inside Highgate Cemetery. So by the early 1970s, we see the evolution of Highgate Cemetery as very much a Gothic landscape with no rules. And it is against all of this backdrop that we now begin to discuss Highgate and the occult. Now I'd like to welcome to the symposium our three speakers. Anyone of a certain vintage of interest in the paranormal, particularly those who collected the Orbis Parkwork encyclopedia in the early 1980s, which David's just pinched my copy here, but here it is, will be familiar with the work of our first speaker. Based in West Sussex, Charles Walker has been actively involved in investigation of psychic phenomena as well as UFOs and occult activity since the late 1960s. Charles is the founder of the long-established Worthing Occult and Paranormal Society, and he's well known for his investigations into psychic phenomena and ritualistic practices involving both the ancient Chanctonbury Ring Hill Fort on the South Downs and nearby Clapham Wood. Author of Race with the Devil, an investigation of Satanism and black magic practices in modern day England, and a contributor to Toynbee Newton's influential book, Demonic Connection. Very excited to have Charles with us today to discuss his researches into various aspects of thought in Highgate. Our second speaker, Fox the Rebel, is the name under which Fox writes on the internet, where he has a very popular blog entitled Rebel Without Soul. Fox is a dark pagan, a term which he will be explaining for those of us who do not have a background in the occult. He's also a chaos magician and a necromancer. Again, Fox will be explaining for us what those terms mean with regard to him and his occult studies practices when we hear from him a little bit later. Fox grew up in the East End of London, imbued with tales of Spring-Heeled Jack and similar tales of the macabre. Highgate Vampire is a case he has found intriguing on many levels, and he's here today to share his knowledge and insight with us. Finally, by no means least, Geraldine Beskin is a popular and well-known figure in the London and international pagan scene. She is a co-proprietor of the Atlantis Bookshop, the longest established occult bookstore in Europe, which opened in 1922, and has a vast knowledge of occult and esoteric subjects. She has a particular interest and lectures regularly on notable figures such as Aleister Crowley and Austin Osman Spare. Geraldine's experience within the occult movement of the 1970s London brought her into contact with many well-known people who had a role in the Highgate Vampire saga, and we are pleased that she has chosen to speak at the podium today. Please welcome our speakers. Also taking part in this section is David, and I was going to begin this part with a sort of a little question and answer session with David, just to try and identify some of these terms that that will come up later. Now, David, Wicca and David Farrell, how does that fit together?
Well, it doesn't really fit together. It depends how you define the word Wicca.
Okay.
As you saw the lady up there at the end, it's nothing really like that. It's a better name for it is the old religion. Wicca is a sort of modern interpretation of it. I was actually involved in it. My mother was involved in spiritualism. We used to attend the spiritualist church, one in Kentish Town in Hornsey Road quite regularly. Much to the disapproval of my father. He didn't agree with me. Also, I grew up into that environment. I was born in a large Victorian house, which incidentally was haunted. Mother died when I was 13 years old, and I felt as if I'd lost a large part of my life. I was really... I travelled around Europe for a bit. I'm only really short-circuiting this. It's been so quick. Got back to England. Eventually, I sought out friends of my mother, spiritualists, people like that. I ended up getting initiated into Wicca, the old religion, in 1964. As I said, Wicca, I didn't say this actually, but I will now, is nothing to do with Satanism, and it's nothing to do with black magic.
I was going to say that was one thing I'd like to say that's different between Wicca and negative magic.
Of course there is. Even magic itself is not white or black, it is neutral. It depends on the intention of human beings who utilise it, who use it. Have I answered your question?
You have. No, that's good. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about the formation of the British Occult Society, which you were involved with. Now, that involved you visiting Highgate and examining evidence for ritualistic activity in the cemetery. I wanted to put up some illustrations here. Could you say what you actually discovered? There was a mausoleum, Rickman mentioned it earlier, the Corey Wright mausoleum in Highgate Cemetery.
There were a group of Satanists using Highgate Cemetery. I'm talking about professional Satanists, not the ones that dress up in robes and used to appear in the news of the world and may still appear in Sunday People. I hardly ever read it. That's what I call theatrical Satanism. But there is a genuine religion. I mean, after all, Satanism is only the reversal of the Christian belief. Everything is reversed. They use black candles. Obviously, it sounds like something under Dennis Wheatley, but they say the Lord's Prayer backwards. Everything, because basically Satanists believe you get your rewards on the material plane. That's the whole purpose of it. They're not interested in white magic. They're not interested in, definitely not the old religion. They're not interested in Wicca, where it teaches the opposite. You get your reward spiritually. You progress, you develop within yourself. That's the whole purpose of Wicca. It teaches you how to do that. Satanism is the reverse of that. And there were a group of professional Satanists using Highgate Cemetery. I'm going back to the late 60s. And we discovered the remains of that picture. That picture there is the result of one such ceremony.
And these markings that you show, these have quite a dramatic effect on your life, because the ramifications of you photograph in these markings. Do you want to discuss a bit of that?
I don't, not really, but I will. The markings, as you can see, they're burnt down stubs of black candles. They're large candles, they're almost thick as that glass, and about that high in the original, I suppose. And the markings, the wax had melted right over onto the marble floor. And incidentally, there were no coffins in that vault, but it was being used as a small chapel. The signs around it were Mars, Saturn, and the moon, well, the new moon, the black moon. And as you can see, the pentacle in the middle was inverted, the pentagram. Like Satan's, everything is reversed, inverted. And there was a picture, a slide up before, which I just caught a glimpse of. There was a small bottle of methylated spirits, which they left in the vault. But ironically, it still had the label on. It was a very dark brown bottle, it wasn't very high, half that size. It had the name of the chemists on it. And they were based in Highgate High Street.
So this is important establishment of this.
Very important. It almost establishes that it was left there by accident. It was sort of at the side of a cremation. It proved almost irrevocably to me anyway, and others. The vault's been used regularly. It was being done by local people. I took, after photographing it, I took that bottle into the chemist, which is in Highgate, on Highgate Hill, Highgate High Street. And we asked them if they remembered it. We were trying to find out who bought the methylated spirit, which was used as part of the ceremony, which unfortunately they couldn't. Ironically, the police found that photograph in my flat, which I kept there quite innocently for quite a few years. Just a bit I didn't want to tell you. I think I ought to, because we have the markings photograph. And there was also a picture that appeared in my flat that appeared of a naked lady who was kneeling by those markings. Yes, I took the picture of the naked lady. I took the pictures of of those markings. I took the picture of the methylated spirits bottle, but I did not make the actual markings. That is what the whole point is. But some years later, when the police raided my flat in 1974, in a connection with another matter in Highgate Cemetery, which I was acquitted of, they found the photographs. And one particular photograph, as I said to you, photograph of the markings, it was identical to that, but there was a young girl naked because she was kneeling in front of the markings. No, I wasn't conducting an orgy. That's what they tried to say in court. God, you wouldn't believe it. But Ham and I were doing a series of stories on all this black magic and desecration, etc. And I was approached by an American magazine who had an agency in London. And some very persistent reporter said he wanted, have you got any pictures of your meetings? We've heard you, they take place sky-clad, that's without clothes, obviously. And I said, no, because they're private meetings. I said, you can't attend them unless you're initiated, which is true. And he was so persistent, he said, please, and they offered me quite a lot of money. So one night I went into Highgate Cemetery, taking, I just call her a friend, a young lady friend. There were 2 or 3 others, there was myself, the young lady, and 2 other people. We asked them to pose in front of those markings. The police found the picture of my flat in connection with the other matter in '74. They actually charged myself with making those markings. The only, they found the picture of the new girl. They produced it in court. I had an extremely biased High Court judge, who's now passed away, who was called Judge Argyle. And he went absolutely mad. He was a devout Christian.
Involved in the Oz trial, wasn't he?
He was the same, yes. He was the judge that presided over the Oz trial, and he caused an outrage, public outrage, because he sentenced him for 2 years imprisonment, I think, for an obscene picture of Rupert Bear. It was only a cartoon. And he got the picture of myself, and he passed it. He had the usher pass it to the jury, and he looked at me, and he said, members of the jury, I almost know this by heart, look at that. A picture showing a naked lady, her eyes raised to the heavens. He said, if you do not think that is anti-Christian, he said, we would just have to acquit Mr. Farrand. He said, but surely, he said words to the effect, but no person in the right mind could think that. I got found guilty because after the picture of the new girl, I believe the picture I took of the naked lady was actually published in an American magazine. I knew it was from America, that's why I wasn't so worried about doing it.
But the actual result of this was that you actually went to prison for something you didn't do.
And that's the end result for 6 months, the maximum for making those markings, which I didn't make. Sorry that was a bit long-winded.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So you established through that connection with the spirit world that actually people in Highgate were involved in this. Now you've got an idea actually where these people were based, and where they say you were talking to me about a house that you investigated.
The Satanists I was talking about and made those markings were using Highgate Cemetery. There's no question about that. I was working not for, but with the Hampstead and Highgate Express. And I actually took that photograph and to show the editor at the Ham and High. I said it proves evidence of black magic. Not talking about vandalism, not talking about pseudo-Satanism, or even this more sincere body snatching, taking skulls, coffin handles, plaques off coffins. That was going on too. I actually showed the photograph to the Ham and High editor, Gerald Eisenman, who invited me to come into his office. He said, bring the evidence with you. The Satanists that were using Highgate Cemetery got to hear about this, spreading like wildfire all around Highgate Village. And the next thing you know is I began to get a spate of threatening letters from these this group of Satanists, and I know they were local because in the old days, most of you might remember, letters were stamped that with the area. Like for example, if you had a letter from Wood Green or Holloway or Muswell Hill, you'd actually see stamped Muswell Hill on there. And it was therefore fairly easy to tell that these letters were coming from Southgate, around Muswell Hill, Crouch End, and Barons Green, areas very close to North London. That's what made me conclude that the people responsible were locals. Letters said to me, Farrah, by your interference with you have summoned the wrath of the god Lord Addict, which is quite a high supernatural deity. And they were signed with significant symbols. They were definitely genuine letters, and they were even splashed with blood. I don't know if it was human blood, it could have been blood from a sheep's heart, I just don't know, but it was definitely animal blood or human. They were warning me off. And simultaneously, while they were using that vault in Highgate Cemetery, they were also using a house, I'm not going to give you the address, but I think I've told you privately, in Highgate. They were using that more in the winter, indoors, to perform their sort of debauched ceremonies. And yes, that was going on too.
Can I, at this point, bring Charles in, because I know that your researchers have sort of meshed into this, and you've been involved with.
I have, because whilst we were doing research and work for Demonic Connection, we've already mentioned, I had contact from a woman that called Mary, protection otherwise, that in 1965, after the death of her mother, she went along to a spiritualist church seeking, some kind of proof that Mum was at peace now and rest and everything else. And she was approached by somebody who said that they could move her on to somebody else that would give her real help, and had to arrange a meeting, which was in Highgate. I mean, initially she said London, we got it down to Highgate in the end with her. She went to this meeting and she was introduced to what she was told was the high priest of this church. They said it was an ordinary couple, so we're sort of talking white magic, Wicca, whatever you like, and that they could provide her with comfort she needed for the death of her mother. Well, as it turned out, it was far from that, because she was told that this was an old religion and it was much more powerful than Christianity, so they were leading her along to thinking she was getting into something, quite nice. However, when she got to know the name of the group, obviously she realised the situation had changed. It was called the Black Cathedral, and they were meeting in a house inside in Highgate. She was explained what she'd have to go through for the ritual. There was sex involved. They were operating Skyclad, but that's normal in things like Wicca. She was prepared in a room separately. This is for the initiation. I mean, she went as far as accepting what they said, because they made her believe it was all legit, it was all nice, it was all, perfectly safe. She had to wear nothing. They did give her a robe to wear initially, but the clothes had to be removed. They said that then disassociates you with everything from the past. Everything from your past life is gone. Well, the end of it was, I mean, she went through quite a nasty ritual, and it was initiated into quite a nasty ritual, and she had to swear allegiance to the horned god, to the priest and priestess. She had quite a rough time of it in the end. It really was bad. I mean, the house was a dark, dank house. There was, at the top of a stairway, a large representation of a horned god, a goat, if you like. She really had a very, very, very bad time of it. Very bad time of it. But as I say, this was in Highgate, and this came out separate to anything I knew about David's situation with this group that had drawn the symbol and the house help, totally separate.
Right. Was she able to leave that?
She did eventually get out of it, yes, which is why, not her real name, she no longer lives in London or anywhere near Highgate at all. So you got out of it in the end.
You had a connection there, didn't you? Because there's a possibility that you may have actually visited this house, because you had somebody who came to you in the 1980s in a similar situation.
Yeah, I knew somebody, there was an Italian girl, and she, I believe this made the national press, and she had a connection, she was attending their meetings, and I can only conclude that she had a young baby, and she suddenly left the house she was living in, taking the child with her, and she was never seen since. She came to me, God, this was 18, going back early 80s, and she was telling me about the meetings, and I gave her advice to stop attending them, because they had a very black magical quality to me. I won't give her name, but obviously I should. I have reason to believe it was that very same man which Ron just discussing.
I'd like to bring focus a bit on Charles, on you. I've known about your work, and I've said so in the beginning since the early 1980s.
Yeah.
Could you just sort of expand a little bit on what sort of work that you've been doing, what you've been involved with, specifically at places like Clapham?
Well, yeah, I mean, Clapham, the whole situation of the whole thing, but certainly as far as Clapham is concerned, the whole thing began with UFO sightings and a number of dogs going missing. Now, there was a couple of local people that got involved with the UFO sightings, and as far as they were concerned, their suggestion was that the UFOs were taking the animals. So, I mean, specifically dogs, I always used to say to them, oh yeah, beam me up Scotty, thinking of the Scottish dog. But animals went missing when there were no UFO sightings. Animals were taken ill. No UFOs about, nothing else unusual there. Initially we checked for things like that the farmers had been laying down poison or in some way, baiting something that the dogs had gone onto, but there was none of that at that time. And it was shortly after there'd been some press coverage that I had a phone call from a person suggesting that we should meet in Clapham Woods in the evening. This was. I was working with a couple of other guys at the time, but they were not convenient available. So I went along because I knew the path where they wanted me to meet. It wasn't too far from the road, so I considered myself reasonably safe. And it was when I got up there to the spot where this guy said he would meet me. No sign of anybody at all. I walked up and down 2 or 3 times. Nothing. I thought, well, that's it. Then a voice behind a large bush behind me. That area had been wiped out when we had the 87 storm. Gone now, but and it was him that gave me the name of the group that he was supposed to be a member of, the Friends of the Party, and told me they were responsible for the dogs being ill and the deaths of the dogs. And there was a chance that, from his suggestion at the time, that a number of human deaths might be directly or otherwise connected with that group. And that is how the whole thing started.
This was a priest who went missing, wasn't it?
There was a priest who went missing. Because there seemed to initially be a connection between Clapham and Chanctonbury Ring, because there was also a policeman that was found, and a couple of other people. They were closer to Chanctonbury than they were to Clapham. They were in the intervening area. Then, between Clapham and Chanctonbury, for anybody who knows anything about them, there was a run of ley lines. So the suggestion was they were using the power along those ley lines to do their deeds.
Now, there are quite a few parallels here between yourself and David, because I know that you've been threatened on several occasions.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, several times. Perhaps the worst one was in the centre of Worthing. I don't know if anybody knows where it is. The Journey obviously does. An area, the main street, South Street, Chapel Road. I was stopped by a guy with a gun, suggesting that I should leave things alone if I gave him not just myself but the family's life as well. Unfortunately, it was an area where at that time no CCTV, not close enough anyway. They had images, but it's kind of, we were in the middle. So there was two figures, it could have been anywhere, but there was two figures there. So they really couldn't take that any further. I mean, there's been a couple of others since then. And right up to date, within the last 2 weeks, I've had threatening phone calls, suggesting that I should leave Clapham Woods alone if I know what's good for me. Suggesting that things might happen if I don't.
You sort of think that area is still being used for that?
Yes, but not as much, actually. You know, I mean, it's got to the situation now where it's beginning to come up for development. I think they're finding it more and more difficult. The other thing is that the area they're using, there's a large beech tree, very old beech tree. And because of the bad weather we've been having, rain, winds, whatever, that's deteriorating. Large sections have come off. So I think that was the area where they used. And they can't anymore, it's too dangerous. So I think it is fading out, but they still don't want anybody to go up there.
So through all your experience of this, you must know how to sort of recognise symbols and things and the way that things have been used for specific
Yeah, I mean, we keep an eye on that. The unfortunate thing is, of course, with Demonic Connection and the other, I mean, anybody can go on the net and type in either my name or Clapham Woods, Sussex, and they'd be massive on there about it. So we have to be very careful now, because copycats and idiots will go out and do it. So, you know, let's see if we can catch around, let's see if they put this on the net and say it's Occult. So, yes, there is still stuff found up there, but we're not publishing it anymore. We're not putting it out.
Yeah. Have you had any sort of personal psychic or paranormal experiences up at Clapham or Chanticleer? I know there was an incident at Chanticleer Inn.
There was a Chanticleer Inn, which I was there, I was talking about that earlier. Unfortunately, at the time that happened, we didn't have the nice, inexpensive video cameras we've got now, with the old 8mm or Super 8mm cine cameras, which I couldn't afford at the time. But we went up there with a guy who'd never been up there before. He wanted to go and see what myself and a mate of mine did at weekends, because we used to spend most weekends up at Chanticleer Inn. Not always for anything out of the ordinary, but used to camp up there, even though you're not supposed to. We just got up and camp and hang out. But we took him up there, and almost in the area where we'd initially found a circle made out of chalk with symbols, etc. on it, he was levitating. If only that happened now, we'd have been up there with a video camera, and I could show it and prove it to him, because nobody will believe it. All I have of the incident is the audio, which I don't play to many people now. I mean, no, we actually saw him. I mean, I stand up like that. He was on his back, that high off the ground, and that's no lie. I do a lie detector on that one. It was like that, and it came down with quite a serious thump. Needless to say, he got it. Prefer not to. But yeah, I suppose it might have lasted about 2 minutes perhaps, but he was up in the air. It seemed like a lifetime to us. But
at Clapham, there have been all sorts of...
Clapham, yeah, I mean, in Clapham, there's more feelings than anything else in Clapham. We've had a number of people go up there, believers and otherwise, and they've all felt quite a heavy atmosphere, and not a very pleasant atmosphere at times. Not all the time, but at times. I mean, you could go up there, you could take a week and we could go up there 6 days, nothing. 7th day, you might just get a funny feeling or something like that, you know. It doesn't happen all the time.
Do you think that any of these, the sort of magical practices and ritualistic activity that you've seen evidence of, do you think that can affect the energies of the landscape in any way?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, yeah. I mean, they operate in the vicinity of these ley lines. Now, if we know at the time there's been up there, because of what we found, anything up there, you can guarantee that those ley lines will be much stronger. The energy created by them, whether you believe in ley lines or not, is, you know, up to the individual. But it does get stronger.
Lays are one of the aspects that we'll be looking at later on, specifically in terms of Highgate and other parts.
Yeah, well, something might come out of that, you know, the expert on that, I'm no expert on that, but just telling you what's there, what's been found and where they are.
So do you think this has any sort of connection with paranormal activity? Like ritualistic practice can change the environment and then
it can make it worse. It can heighten the energy. Which and because there's a lot of paranormal, people get a lot of paranormal feelings at Clapham as well, as they do at Chanctonbury. And it's usually, it is heightened at a time when they have been up there. I mean, let's not just put it down to the dark side. I know that at Chanctonbury, those who've practiced Wicca go up there. And you can always feel when they've been there, not a bad feeling, it's a nice, calm, pleasant feeling.
I remember going to Chanctonbury it was before the big 1987 storm that just demolished a lot of the trees there, and I did come across, it looked like a sort of a star shape had been made in the outer
I think you'll find there's a picture in the Demonic Connection there.
Right.
Of the one that we found up there.
Right.
Circle with a star.
This was a star shape in chalk in a circle.
Yeah.
And there were these sort of branches that had been bent over into the...
Something very similar has also been found at Clapham.
Right.
Again in the vicinity of the large tree.
Right.
So, similar activity probably.
So, the question of whether magical practices in natural landscapes can affect the energies of the environment is something that I'm now going to put to our next speaker, Officer Rebel.
Hello everyone.
It's stupid for everyone to have to put up with things as they are, because with witchcraft, your happiness is completely in your hands.
That's blasphemy, what you said.
I was going to say that was very heavy stuff, but I didn't realise that that lady was going to come on the end. So, I really wanted to set the background for the section of the symposium today. That was filmed in the very late 1960s, and through the whole of that previous decade, there was a growing incidence of ritualistic activity across Britain, church desecrations and things of that nature. In the very hard winter of 1963, it's possible to date the first of these incidents, which took place here at Clockhill Church on the A6 in Bedfordshire. Very famous Vincent Highgate, who are present today, who may not have seen it, or may bring back some rather bad and unpleasant memories. We're streaming it to help symposium attendees who were not around at the time to get an idea of how vastly different Highgate Cemetery of today is from what it was in the late 1960s. This is an excerpt from a film directed by Luigi Scattini, of sort of the Mondo generation of exploitation films from the 1960s and 1970s. It's very low budget cinema, and I have to apologise for the quality of the picture.
A police call in London. Jewel grab, prostitute slain, murder. No, but a crime has been committed. A crime upon the dead of Highgate Cemetery. Old religion. And they're not maniacs. They are men and women who live among us, whom we know and like. People we confide in, yarn to over a beer. They are people striking back at the world of technology through the timeless magic of witchcraft. Today, even the most skeptical of us are being forced to admit that our fiends have often succeeded where science is shackled by material data. As all good children know, 13th century witches flew to Sabbaths on broomsticks, brewed foul potions in cauldrons based on a nourishing stock of the dismembered bodies of newborn babes. Today, thanks to a more liberal and fascinated public attitude, you can meet witches at Speaker's Corner Hyde Park, where even children of Satan are entitled to let off steam, carrying with it perhaps a whiff of brimstone. Meet Eleanor Bone, witch.
All you sinners will find out the truth on Judgment Day.
Why, wait. You can find out the truth now, dear. Which is that? We think
Thank you very much for coming. Welcome back. Now, this part of our afternoon is probably the darkest and most sinister part of the symposium, which involves behaviour more of the living rather than the dead. Now, for some members of the audience, you may have seen the clip that we're going to show on the screen next. And for some long-term residents,
What can the police do? There is one witness, and his lips are sealed. Aching terror or complicity. He just isn't sane. But will he ever outlive the memory of those shadows in the night? Shadows thrusting back the tombstones, prizing open the coffins, plunging their hands into the mouldering remnants of the dead. The needle-sharp pikes driven through the dusty skeletons. The police see it as public outrage, maniacal necrophilia. But that's not how the unholy writ of demonology describes it. Viewed from the precincts of the occult, this obscene profanation becomes a formalized ceremonial, the religious observances of the children of Satan, expressing an undying faith in their